Please welcome Fabricio Drumond. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, before we dig into this, just a brief, very high level, the major revenue streams that Axios has. Before we start digging into what each of them means and why we came up with that model.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of our revenue, as it stands today, is advertising related. And we started to invest last year in standing up 2 new businesses that are going to be subscription based. And the idea is that as we expand the company in the future, we would love to see 50% of our revenue coming from an advertising model, and then being balanced by another 50% coming from subscriptions. And we feel that that's
those subscriptions are coming from where?
So two businesses. One is it's what we call Axios Pro. We launched Axios Pro in January of this year, and it's basically very focused content. The first vertical that we launched was in the deal making space. So we're covering everything that a private equity investor, a venture capital investor needs to know in industries like fintech, health tech, ESG and climate, retail. And then the other one is it's a software. It's a SaaS product that we created called Axios HQ. And then Axios HQ is empowering businesses, corporations to communicate like Axios communicates, basically having the opportunity to send internal communication or external communication using the same smart brevity format that we have in our newsletters.
And I just want to clarify so everybody knows, because I didn't know this until I dug into more. Axios HQ is actually not part of the Cox deal?
Yeah, so as part of the transaction, we spun off Axios HQ. So it has become an independent company, so no longer belongs to the Axios media ecosystem, although we'll have obviously the Axios brand and everything else. Mm-hmm. But the future of Axios HQ will be an independent story. Obviously, we'll do a lot of things in partnership across the media company and the software company, but it will remain a standalone business.
So let's go back to the beginning, which is only 5 years ago. What problem was Axios trying to solve? I mean, the world was awash in media. The 2 co-founders of Politico were the ones who were co-founding this. We presumed that it was going to just give us more of same. What was it trying to solve in the marketplace that was already fairly saturated?
Yeah, if you go back and you hear Jim, Roy, and Mike talk about, they'll say back in 2017 that the world didn't need another media company, but here we were, starting the story of Axios. I think the problem that they were trying to solve was one where we as professionals, we need to know more things across more topics than ever. But then being bombarded with content, right? Whether it's coming from publishing platforms, social media platforms. So the thesis that we've been trying to perfect is that a smart professional needs a single source of information that respects their attention and respects their time. Right? So the whole premise of Axios was, how can we build a media platform that can engage smart professionals in a way that they know what to expect from us. They're going to come in, they're going to learn what's new, why it matters, and then it's going to allow them to move on to their next thing. And really focusing on coverage of areas that are consequential to our lives, not just today, but in the future. So we're covering the collision of multiple segments, like how politics and media and technology are colliding, and how the entire fintech movement is colliding with policy and businesses. So I think that's the ethos of Axios, is really trying to deliver efficient information, but really covering things that professionals need to move on and be proficient with their lives.
And it seems, and I think again, it's important that you didn't talk about content so much as you talked about structure and platform. That what you were building was an informational platform, not necessarily more news. And I want to get to the smart brevity piece, which is sort of the core of the Axios brand. Tell us how smart brevity informed everything you do. Give us a sense, because I think one of the things that impresses me looking from the outside in about Axios from the beginning was the discipline the message discipline around the brand, that smart brevity was the brand, and it would inform everything we did. And I'd like you to bring us inside that a little bit and tell us how you pulled that off and the ways in which it informed all you did.
Yeah, so I think it's good to first define what is smart brevity. So in our definition of smart brevity, the smart side, it's about expertise. So from day one, we've always been hiring the very best minds for everything that we cover. So if you cover media, how many of you read Sarah Fisher, Media Trends? Sarah's probably one of the smartest people that I've met, and Jacqueline, probably, her and I know Sarah very well, and she's just a brilliant mind in the media space. She's always on top of things that are happening, trends that are happening in the industry. So that's the component of the smart. The brevity is the structure. It's the format and how we deliver information, and we have a construct. And if how many of you read Axios in the room? Don't be shy. Okay. Well, those who don't read us, I encourage you to visit our site, and Media Trends might be a good place to start. But it's the construct. It's in how we deliver the information. And I think the thing at Axios that we did very well is, when I think of strategy for a business, it's about the things you're going to do, but more importantly, are the things that you're not going to do. And I think we've been very, very disciplined, to your point, on how are we going to engage this audience that is very, whose attention is being, the competition for their attention is extremely high. So the one way that we felt to like crack the code and kind of break through the noise was by delivering to them something that is refreshing. From a sense of like respecting their time. Like how many, we hear this oftentimes from our audience, which is, thank you so much for respecting my time, for delivering to me what I need to know, giving me the facts. There's no emotion in the reporting that we do at Axios. It's only, insights and data points. And then we let you, make your own conclusion or reach your own conclusions. And that model worked well. When you have an expert communicating in an efficient way with a high discerning audience, great things can happen. And we had this idea of, how can you grow an audience with such a high discerning, attention and a high bar for content? And the idea was this idea of radiating out. So in the early years of Axios, we focused, really trying to aim at the bullseye of influencers. Think of like C-suites, policymakers. So our whole idea was like, if we can hook their attention, naturally over time, the individuals around them, their VPs and their, staffers will eventually say, oh, my boss is reading Axios. Maybe I should be reading what he's reading or she's reading. So that's how we built an incredible audience. We have 3 million subscribers today across, very senior, very, skewing very senior in terms of career and influencing power. And it all started with this movement of engaging the bullseye and then rating out over time using the formula of smart brevity.
So let's move to the monetization piece, particularly of the smart brevity piece. Were you able to productize, and we'll save the SaaS part for later, just from an advertising perspective, were you able to productize and leverage that smart brevity maybe in ways that other media aren't?
Well, we had a big bet that paid off, and we continue to be focused on it, which is we led with a native advertising unit that very much looks like the content that you would read. The only distinction you can see is just like there's a presented by or a sponsored by at the top. And the reason we did that is we also built Axios to be a mobile-first user experience. So Jim will say this, like, no one in the industry has obsessed with every pixel of a phone screen as he has, as he's thinking about, okay, how do we deliver content, through a mobile lens in the most efficient and most elegant way? Because we really focus on trying to provide, whether you're coming to us and you're having an editorial experience or a branded experience, we want that experience to feel refreshing, to feel elegant, and so that you can walk away with the sentiment of, this was worthy of my time, which, by the way, Axios means worthy in Greek, which is sort of the ethos of the company. So we apply that same smart brevity formula on the editorial side to the branded side. So as you're navigating content, you're going to see an elegant message coming from a sponsor. And we actually proof every ad that goes on our site. So we're literally, or newsletters, like we're literally going word by word because we want to help our sponsors be impactful in how they deliver their message, but more importantly, we want our audience to walk away feeling energized by the content that they're exposed to.
Were you able to extract a premium price for that? And how could you go back to advertisers and say, see, it worked?
Yes, we definitely have a premium in terms of, I think it's mainly because of the format. It performs better than what you would call the industry average. We do 2 to 4x from an engagement perspective. And it also relates to the audience, right? Because we were able to establish trust. We built a solid foundation for our platform to grow. We established trust with a very premium audience. And then, yes, you can command premium pricing by delivering a premium experience.
Now, the other part to this was talent, because when you pointed out and asked people what they read, the first thing you mentioned was Sarah. So I'm curious about, tell us a little, bring us inside a bit of the company culture, because you were very good, and I think a little famous for cultivating finding good talent, and then cultivating them. Tell us how that worked inside, what the policy was towards talent, both acquiring but also grooming within.
Yeah, I mean, we have an incredible, an incredible team at Axios. I work surrounded by the smartest people that I've ever met in my life. That's a fair statement to say. We're very focused on creating a high-performing culture, one that focuses on the trust that we have with our audience. So there are things that we do at the company that allows us to really be focused on being audience first. You will hear the term, being audience first in everything that we do. Whether it's on the editorial side of Axios or on the business side of Axios, we really strive every single day to protect the most important thing that we have, which is the relationship and the trust with our audience, and I think we will never put that at risk. There will never be a decision in the company that jeopardizes that relationship.
But is it a relationship with Axios, or is it a relationship with Sarah, with the other editors? How much do you emphasize as part of this is personality and connection with particular reporters and experts? An important part of this.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of the strategy. We mentioned Sarah. I can mention other awesome talent that we have, like Dan Primack. I mentioned the venture capital and the private equity space. The relationship that exists is with Dan, right? Like Dan has an important voice in the industry, in the space. We're actually hosting an event this month in New York City called Axios BFD, which is a card in Dan's newsletter if you read Dan's coverage. Where very much his personality shapes the conversations that we have at the table, because he brings so much depth and coverage for the industry. And
it's important, and again, as you mentioned, using those reporters, those editors throughout your relationship with the audience is important. They're not just experts writing a newsletter. You're using them throughout the relationship in things like events.
Yeah, and the newsletter is that first touch point, right? The majority of that relationship happens every single day with the delivery of our newsletters. So Mike Allen oftentimes describe our newsletters as you having a breakfast conversation with your audience. So like, what would you like to share with them to get them started for the day? And I think through that lens is how Mike and Sarah and Dan and Ina and others in the company approach how they engage the audience. Like, what do I want to share with them today that's going to make them smarter and then get them ready for the day ahead?
So this is the foundation, the smart brevity, the staffing, the platform nature of this. Let's talk about how you built business strategies around this. Because you, in talking about this beforehand, you characterized this as a flywheel. And I'd like you to sort of tell us what that means and what those elements of the flywheel are, and how you saw it work, how these various revenue streams have been feeding each other.
Yeah, so this idea of a flywheel is at the very center of the flywheel. We have this audience that we define as a smart professional, which includes all of us here in this room and every other professional across the country and globally. People who need news and information to be successful and to manage their day-to-day, whether it's personally or professionally. So that's really the focus of Axios. So how can we best empower this group of people with the information that they need? And then when you think about we think through the lens that we see that professional, there are 4 things that you need information on to navigate the world around you. You need to know what's happening around the world and around the country. You need to know what's happening around the community or the city in which you live. You need to know what's happening in your industry, and you need to know what's happening in your company. So those are the 4 buckets that we really focus on. And the flywheel, from our perspective, spins around giving that professional 4 doors that they can use to enter into the flywheel. So eventually, you might learn about Axios because you're a professional in media and you're reading what Sarah Fisher is reporting on the media side of Axios. We have Axios Austin, which is a local newsletter. Maybe you enter through this door by connecting with us on Axios Austin, where we have a team covering everything that's happening in the city to get you smarter, faster around the town. Maybe you're an investor, an investment professional that enters through the Axios Pro door, or maybe your company subscribed or acquired a license of Axios HQ, and that's how you came into touch. So once you're in that circle, then it's our job to figure out what is the next best piece of content or information that we can connect you to so that you can continue to expand your relationship across Axios. And that experience is sort of the same, like it's led by Smart Brevity, so everything feels similar to you, so you're used to it. And what we find too is as the audience engages with us, through the lens of Smart Brevity, it's very hard for them to dial back, because once you learn that you can consume information much more efficiently than you used to, you sort of get addicted to it, because then it's respecting your time. You're getting, you're walking away with the things you need to know, and you're like, wow, I can learn so much more doing it this way. Jim says that Smart Brevity ultimately can help us build the bionic mind. That you can consume so much more information in so less time, but still not giving up the depth and the worth of information. So that's what the flywheel is all about. So it's figuring out how can we inform this group and how can we expand that relationship once they enter into the flywheel.
Okay, you asked your own question. How? So how does the flywheel fly? What did you do once you get them into this entry point? What are the things that you've learned about most effectively, essentially cross-selling, so that you actually are engaging them well and targeting them with the right thing, the right next thing?
It becomes a consumer insights play. I think one of the benefits of Axios, we have a massive first-party relationship with the audience. We have, like I said, 3 million emails. On the local front, which is a venture that we started last year, we're going to be in 30 cities by the end of this year. We'll be engaging close to 2 million professionals across the fastest growing cities in America. Which actually we believe is this new influence frontier, because so many of us, how many of you moved during the pandemic to a new city? Yeah, there you go. So that is a movement that's happening across the country. We have professionals who are in cities, who moved from New York City to places like Denver, Austin, Miami, Phoenix. So with local, we're tracking that movement, and I think that the next decade is going to be very interesting to track, because the socioeconomic shifts that will come with professionals establishing camp in new hubs will allow us to tell that story from the coverage. So what we're really focused on right now is understanding from a consumer insights perspective, what are the things that individuals like you are consuming from Axios, and how can we expose you to those pieces of content? And that's a big play of our data team. It's just like dissecting that list and understanding what's next for you that we know will be worth your time.
One of the funnels that's really interesting is your newsletter funnel that has a free tier and a paid tier. And the strategy that you have for moving people from free to paid is really, we talk about the ways in which you do this, because they're two very different types of newsletters aimed at somewhat different audiences. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and that's the Axios Pro play. We have, we talked about Dan Primack and Pro Rata. That's the newsletter that he publishes. That's a free newsletter. We have probably 230,000 subscribers reading Dan on a daily basis. So when we launched Pro, the first vertical that we invested was the deals space. And we knew that a lot of the subscribers for Axios Pro were readers of Dan, and the reason we knew this was we conduct research with our audience on a regular basis, and what Dan covers in Pro Rata is what I would define as like the boiling of the ocean for deals, right? So he's mapping out the entire industry. But the bottom line is, when you look at the investment landscape nowadays, you have a lot of investors that are very focused in particular industries. So you have investors who only invest in health tech. You have investors who only invest in climate deals and ESG. So the idea behind it was, what if we built a platform that allowed you to go deeper? To go into an area of expertise that you command, but then maybe someone else doesn't care. Like if you're not investing in fintech, there's really no value in tracking the deal flow in the pipeline. But if you're investing in health tech, we can bring you expertise, and then we hired experts for each one of the verticals, and now we're inviting that audience, through a B2C model and a B2B model to engage with us in very focused content.
By the way, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there were empires of print newsletters built on that exact same model, which is you find a small enough audience and you can get them to pay a very high premium to get information nobody else cares about.
That is exactly the play, and especially when you market, like that's what I tell the team. I said, listen, you either care about health tech deals or you don't. So don't waste your time trying to invite somebody who doesn't track that. And then the next vertical we're launching is policy, which you would argue is the same. Like we're going to cover healthcare policy, energy policy, tech policy. And then again, like you either care about that or you don't. But if you care, that's vital to you. Like you need to know that information in order to be proficient in your space.
And you use the top of the funnel to identify those audiences.
We have the exact same audience. We have
that's your harvesting device.
Axios Vitals is a free newsletter covering healthcare for anyone who cares about policy and business of healthcare. So that's where we're going to be inviting folks to go deeper with us. So that's the whole play. Yeah.
The other part to this is software as a service. You actually took this entire model, and this is one of those rare cases where a publisher took the very foundation of what they do and productized it into a B2B play. Tell us about how that actually works and who you're selling to.
Yeah, this is the Axios HQ story is a fascinating one because what happened was in years 1 and 2 of Axios, a lot of our clients on the media side started calling us and say, hey, can you teach us to write like you guys are writing? Because our teams here love reading Axios, and we can tell that they don't love reading what we publish. And then Jim and Roy will say, the first 3 calls, they say, well, that's not our business. We can't help you. But after like the 10th call, they were like, okay, we hit a nerve here. There's a big problem to be solved here. And it turns out that the same problem that Axios was trying to solve on the media side with large-scale audiences, it's also a problem for communicators within companies. Every large company publishes a newsletter, right? An internal newsletter covering company news or HR information, what have you. And as we started digging deeper into the problem, we realized that there's a way for Smart Brevity to also empower CEOs, chief communication officers, to do a better job of engaging their stakeholders, their employees. So it first started almost like as a consulting service because we didn't have the technology, but we soon realized that there was an opportunity for a tech product to be built, and that's what we started to do about 3 years ago, investing in the development of what now is Axios HQ. Which is actually a software that we use internally at Axios. Like we internally communicate using Axios HQ to provide important updates across departments, company updates, and it's delivered in the exact same way that we deliver our newsletters to inboxes.
But you being your own customer is different from everybody else being your own customer. So you're in another business that requires tech support, refresh, customer retention. How is that handled? I'm guessing this is a separate P&L that's successful on its own, but don't you need to staff up to make something like that work?
Oh, 100%. And that's why we spun it off from the media company because it truly becomes a software business. And you nailed it. It's a sales team, it's a product and tech and engineering team, really focused on launching new features, understanding what's sticking, what's not sticking, having account management. It becomes a very it was incubated within a media company, but we very quickly realized that in order for it to really run its course and fulfill its full potential, it would have to become an independent business.
Is it profitable yet? Is it self-sustaining?
I mean, it's high growth. I mean, it's a tech, it's a tech company making massive investments, but there's a huge upside. I have no doubt that business is gonna, have a successful story.
I have just a couple more things that I want to cover with Fabricio, but we do want to take your questions. So think about some questions, and Barbie will get a microphone to you in a second. I do want to cover the local piece because that's one of the great stories of media. One of the sad stories of media in the last decade is the diffusion and the denigration, really, of local business models for media. One of the rationales behind the Cox investment is to try to fuel that next stage, which you guys are trying to revive a notion of local media. What are you going to do that other people didn't do in trying to crack this nut? There have been a lot, everything from patch to town meeting to a whole variety of newspaper ploys to make a sustainable business model out of local reporting. What are you guys going to do differently?
And we're very open about this, and we welcome input from everyone because we're trying to solve this because we believe in the mission of local journalism, and we believe this is fundamental to any country's democracy. This thing started with us trying to figure out, if you look at local news, the revenue is there. Like it's the closest number that I get to is $100 billion a year is invested in local advertising. So that money still is in the ecosystem. I think what happened is, with the shifts that we've seen over the last decade, between social platforms and local legacy media outlets, just the cost equation in the platform itself shifted, right? That money obviously shifted away from the legacy plays. So our belief was, what if we could build a low-cost, mobile-first local news platform that opened up itself to a diversified way of being monetized? And the way we think about it is, by leading with a mobile-first approach, you remove a lot of the costs that the legacy local media companies have with print and large newsrooms and et cetera. And because we have a national hub already in place for Axios, there's a lot of synergies that we can explore from our HQ and the consolidation of our national platform to support teams. And that way we're only investing incremental expenses into journalism. So we have reporters in every city. We try to hire the very best, keeping the formula of smart brevity in place. We're usually hiring the most influential, consequential journalists in each city who can really establish and engage audiences of professionals. And then from the monetization perspective, what we're trying to do is, how can we, as we expand the canvas, we're going to be in 30 cities by the end of the year. We're in 24 right now. There's 6 more coming to market by December. We plan to expand to over 50 next year. As we build this network, national brands will start to see this platform not as a local play, but more like a national platform with local delivery. Which is very, very important to think about, especially in the context of professionals moving around the country. It's going to become hard for platforms and brands to reach professionals in the way that we're going to establish the relationship, having that morning engagement, a habitual relationship on a day-to-day basis. So that's the one way we think for national it will matter. Then you have local advertisers. You're still trying to engage your community, your local business, performing arts. You're still trying to engage that audience, so there will be opportunities for them to continue to engage. And then you also have what I would define as like performance marketing or consumer activation type of brands who are just trying to lead gen across the ecosystem. So that's the formula that we're trying to build, like low cost and then diversified revenue entry to enable cities to be profitable.
I'd like to see that work, because I've been covering this for a long time, and I think probably more than any other single challenge that I've seen over the years that I've covered going back to the mid-90s was that attempt to digitize local monetization and to do that effectively. I've seen so many schemes from newspapers, from disruptive players who are all trying to find ways to tap the local market in ways that both Facebook and Google somehow succeeded at, but news organizations have never, ever been able to do. So this is going to, that's going to be tough. This is going to be tough.
Well, yeah, we're definitely aware of that, and but heavily invested in making this work.
Before we go to questions, one last question. I want to circle back to something you started with, is that it was just as important the things you decided not to do. What are the key things you either didn't do or the channels you've decided are just you still haven't cracked the code yet on how to enter into?
I don't think there's anything we haven't done. I think we're at a point where we're very confident that we have a model that works, and we're at that stage now where we just want to take that model to scale. So if you ask me, like, where do I spend my time thinking about Axios and the business and kind of where we're headed, like there's nothing that isn't working or that we haven't tried or we regretted. It's more about, okay, how do we go faster? How do we expand the reach and from both from the audience perspective? I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface with the audience, the potential. I would argue that we should probably have 30 million subscribers in like 10x the list of people that we're informing today. So that's where really I spend my time. And then also, like on the monetization side, is like, how do we get more brands and more partners to see the quality of the work that we're doing? We were together with our team last week, and I said there are two, when it comes to Axios, there are like two types of people. people who know Axios and love us, like when people know Axios, they'll say, "Oh, I love Axios. So, the work you guys are doing is incredible." And then there are people who don't know us. So our job is to figure out those who don't know us and engage them either as a reader or as a partner, so that they can experience the quality of the work that the team is
but
doing.
you have like a toe in the water in TV. You've got the HBO. Is the HBO thing still going?
No, that's still, so the HBO season is over. So we did that for 4 seasons. We still have an active team, in-house production team that is actively bringing ideas. You will see Axios on TV in the near future.
And podcasting is really kind of fairly slim podcasting entries.
Yeah,
Axios.
podcast we have Axios Today. It's our daily podcast. There's excitement around podcast, but from a business perspective, I think there's still potential to be unlocked with Axios Today. I think there's a lot of excitement around podcasting as an industry. I think it's a growing category. But it's, from a business perspective, standing up a podcast and reaching scale requires, a lot of investment, a lot of patience. And right now we have a very solid podcast that we'll continue to invest before we start activating new podcasts.
Let's see if we got some questions. And we got over here, and please, throughout the conference, if you could stand and let us know who you are and who you're with so people get to know you.
Sure. Hi. Mike O'Neill at Scripps. So this is great to listen to the Axios story. Just curious, because I think Steve asked earlier, you have this high-valued content and tremendous writers. I admittedly am not a reader, so I'm more asking from like a publisher perspective and how you work with buyers, advertisers, in proving that there's KPI and a story or a use case behind those that are consuming the content and then acting upon the advertiser's message, within the content. So can you speak to that a little bit? Maybe some success stories from your client base? Yeah,
of course. I think it's like one way we measure that engagement is through the newsletter publications. So we carry an extremely high open rate. Our average rate open rate in our newsletters range from 40 to 50%, and we're very focused on keeping a list of engaged subscribers. So I think that's one positive signal that brand partners look for to understand, okay, are you truly engaging this audience? We have a lot of data describing the type of audience that we're engaging across the newsletter. And then when it comes to the ad performance, obviously we'll focus on the right KPIs. We have an internal, it's called the Smart Brevity Studio. It's almost like an internal agency in a way that we leverage the work that the brand journalists can do to support partners. Like we really, the message that Jimmy, who runs our studio, will share with clients to say, what type of message you want to deliver. We know how this audience consumes content, so let's partner and contribute here with our collective expertises to yield the best performance for you. So that is oftentimes when the Smart Brevity Studio team engages to optimize messaging, to really figure out how to crack the code in terms of getting that message across. We oftentimes, or 90% of the time, we see an improvement in performance, and then partners begin to trust that relationship even more. But the rule of thumb across the board for brand partners with us, because we engage this professional audience who is coming to us to learn something new, the more you as a brand can teach something new to this audience, they will reward you back with their attention. Like that's the rule of thumb that I tell every partner that works with us. Say, if you have a report, you have a stat, you have a data point, teach me something new. Invite me to go deeper so I can learn more. So if you apply that formula across the Axios ecosystem, you will resolve 90% of your challenges with engagement.
Discipline.
What are you going to do and not to do.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody, for having us.